Okay, we're up to the final point that the Mesilas Yesharim makes in Perek Yotes, page Kuf Zayin, the last paragraph of Omnam, and it really fits together with what I spoke about on Tuesday morning, actually. Are you here? Too boring for you?
Yeah. What?
One day you'll regret it. The Omnam Oid Iker Sheni. The Omnam Oid Iker Sheni Yesh B'Kavonas HaChassidus. There's another important Iker that's, you could leave, by the way, if you want. You could leave. It's a similar topic, which you have not yet absorbed, apparently. Because if you absorbed it, you wouldn't have left, because you're part of a tzibur. So you will Iker the whole shvuz during the shvuz, while the Torah was being taught. Okay, whatever. There's another important ikr in the intention of a chassid, and that is toivas hadar. The chassid has in mind the benefit of his generation. The chassid doesn't think only about himself. The chassid thinks about the people around him, about the various circles of people around him, including the entire generation. Now, in this Mesilas Yesharim, it will be clear that he's speaking in this Mesilas Yesharim specifically about the people of his generation, the Yidden, the Jewish people of his generation, but the concepts that we spoke about on Tuesday of just being a part of society do fit into what he's saying over here. But in any event, Shehine Ro'i L'chol Chassid, it is appropriate for every Chassid sheyiskaven b'maisav, that when he acts, he should have in mind l'toivas doirei kuloi, for the complete benefit of his generation, l'zakos oisam, to be mezaka them, to give them zechuyos, to give to them, ulahagen aleim, and to protect them. This person is a chassid. Let's not forget that we're just sightseeing here. We're not chassidim. We're not on this madrega. We're learning this part of Mesilas Yesharim because we're sightseeing. We want to know what a chassid is. But the Mesilas Yesharim is talking to the chassid, and he's saying, you great chassid, who's already up to the madrega of chassidus, you have to recognize that you have a responsibility, that the generation is leaning on you, like the Gedolei Hador, that the generation depends on you. V'hu inyan hakasav. And this is what the Torah says, Imru tzadik ki tov, ki pri ma'alaleim yoichelu. It says that when it says yoichelu, they eat, it means the people of the generation. And it says the tzaddik is tov, the tzaddik is ki tov, ki pri ma'alaleim, the actions, the peiros, the fruits, the actions that the tzaddik does, we, the generation, eat them. What does that mean? Meaning, shekol ador oichel mi peirosav, meaning that we benefit from the actions of the tzaddik. V'chein amru zechronim levracha, Chazal say in Parsha Shalach, when Moshe Rabbeinu sent the Meraglim to Eretz Yisrael, he said, check if there's a tree. So Pashup Shad is that a tree really means check if there are trees, like are there fruit trees? Is there a harvest? But the Chazal darshan from the singular lashon of tree, that a tree, just like a tree, protects the area around it. It gives shade to the area around it. And Adam Gadol also protects the area around him. So Hayesh ba'etz, im yesh mi shemogein al doiroi ke'etz. Is there someone in Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to know, who protects, who shields his generation like a tree? And Chazal say that Eov, who was a big tzaddik and lived in Eretz Yisrael, had died, so there was no eitz left anymore. B'tira, and see, shezeu ritzonei shel Malkim. This is what Hashem wants. Sheyu chasidei Yisrael mizakim umechaprim al kol shara madregas shabayim. That the tzaddikim in Klal Yisrael should be mizakeh, should benefit and be mechaper. You see this? That we should ask for kapara for those who don't do the right thing. I want to just point out, it's very important, that there's an attitude sometimes that frum people have, and certainly when people get really into it, when people suddenly they're on fire and they're doing well. Someone's in a yeshiva and the guys in yeshiva who are baining him, they're middle of the road. Seder is in and out, davening is yes and no, being attached to technologies, whatever, good days and bad days. And every once in a while you'll have a guy that suddenly he becomes ignited. You've seen it, right? He becomes ignited, he's on fire. That guy has to be very careful about something. And that is that it is natural that person automatically starts looking down on the people around him. Even if he's just doing it for one day, he will start looking down on the people around him. I always say this mashal, I've said it hundreds of times, but I'm going to say it again because this is the appropriate place for it. When I first moved to Waterbury, so I was not the Rav yet in the shul, so I used to daven in yeshiva. We had, Baruch Hashem, a beautiful yeshiva, and it was beautiful, beautiful Friday night davening, and I used to daven there Friday nights. But being a young father, dealing with the challenges of a young father, I often didn't make it to davening on time. So I would walk into Kabbalah Shabbos davening in the middle of Kabbalah Shabbos. And I remember specifically the feeling, Waterbury gets pretty cold in the winter. I remember the feeling of walking to shul, and you know how your face turns bright red when you're walking in like really cold weather? And I had the mazel that every time I walked into yeshiva, the whole yeshiva was turning around to say, Boye v'shalom. So I was always like a deer in the headlights, trying to like sneak in and trying to assume people understand that I'm busy. People must know my wife works late on Fridays, whatever the excuses I was putting in my head. But one week, I got to yeshiva on time. And I remember it clearly. I got to yeshiva on time. I was there before mincha. I got a siddur. I got a chumash. The only time there's no Yetzer Hara to battle is during davening. That's the time that we learn Geschmack, during davening, right? And I got a siddur, a chumash. I sat down. I davened mincha like a mensch. I was feeling so holy. They started Kabbalah Shabbos. I said Kabbalah Shabbos with them. We sang. L'chadaydi was singing. I'm into it. I'm learning on the side while I'm singing the whole thing. Okay? And then they do Boye v'shalom. I turn around Boye v'shalom with the olam, and some poor guy is walking in the door that minute. And I think to myself automatically, what kind of person comes in during Boye v'shalom? Doesn't he realize he missed Mincha B'tzibur? Doesn't he realize he missed the whole Kabbalah Shabbos? It was amazing how fast I was able to forget that was me and be critical and look down on the people around me. It was a very strong lesson. People that are doing strongly, what? Okay, it's part of the challenge, but it's something that happens when you have a family that's not religious. Many of us have family that's not religious, so you don't see them that often. But when it's Hanukkah or when there's a Simcha, suddenly you're sitting around with your not religious family, and some people, they just end up giving off a vibe of I'm better than you. And I want to tell you something. You might be better than them in some way. You're being Mekayim mitzvahs and they're not. That's a fact. They might have more money than you. You might have more mitzvahs than them. That's a fact. It's not for us to judge because we don't know what people's challenges are. But this Mesilas Yesharim is so clear that it is absolutely inappropriate for a person to look at the people around him that are not holding where he is and to have this kind of bittul. Adarabah, says the Mesilas Yesharim, you should recognize if you're around people that are on quote-unquote a lower level than you, you should recognize that you have a responsibility to them. Are you davening for them? Are you trying to do what you can to bring them closer to Hashem in a way that makes them feel positive and approached in a positive way? We don't look at the people around us with disdain. We look at the people around us as our responsibility. Because if we're stronger, we have an achrayus to the people who aren't as strong. And that's what he brings this raya. That's what Chazal say about the lulav and the hadassim and the aravos and the esrig. Yavayu eila v'yechapru al eila. Right? This is very famous. We all learned this, that the lulav, Chazal say, has a taste and doesn't have a smell. Okay? The hadassim have a smell, but they don't have a taste. The aravos don't have a smell and don't have a taste. But the esrog has a smell and a taste. So Chazal say that the taste, that represents the delicious taste of Torah. The smell, that represents the beautiful smell of someone who serves Hashem properly, does the actions, the mitzvahs. So the lulav, which represents taste, that represents Balei Torah, who are missing in their actions. They're not practicing what they preach or what they learn. The Hadassim represents someone who has actions. He does all the mitzvahs, but he's not holding and learning. The Aravos represent the person, unfortunately, who's not holding and learning and not doing actions. The Esrig represents the Talmid Chacham, who has the actions and the Torah. So what does the Esrig do? Now the Esrig stands apart. All the three minim are in one hand, and the Esrig is in another hand. So one would say the Esrig should say, forget about those three. I'm the Esrig. But that's not what we do. How are we Makayim the mitzvah of the Daled Minim? We take the Esrig and we connect it to the other three minim. Yavai elu v'yechapru al elu. The Talmid Chacham is responsible to care for, to worry about, and not to act in a holier than thou kind of way. Why? They're Hashem. I did the work. Can you imagine? You know the thing, imagine you have two classmates. So let's talk secular, okay? You have two classmates in Harvard Law School, okay? One of them is partying like you only can when you're in Harvard, okay? And the other one is working 24/7 like you only can when you're in Harvard. The pressure, I don't know if you know about Harvard, but the pressure is like the students there don't sleep, they don't eat, like the ones that are like competing for the high marks. Okay? So you have a roommate who's drunk, he's out there, he's not showing up to things, and then comes this big project you both have to do. You have to research cases that have to do with anti-Semitism starting from the early 1900s until now, and write a detailed analysis of the direction of American law in relation to anti-Semitism. Good project? You sit down. Now you already know how to look up cases. You already know where to look, how to write it. Your friend doesn't have a clue. Your friend comes over to you and he says, can you give me a hand? How could you not think to yourself, I did the work. I also like to party, but I didn't. I did the work. So now I have to do it for you? Yeah, that's a reasonable feeling? Valid. So how come by us, you have a tzaddik that works hard and he learns Torah? Other people are not learning Torah. I'm learning Torah. You know, the guys in this yeshiva, so many guys in this yeshiva could have chosen, I think the overwhelming majority of guys would say that they could have chosen an easier schedule, a school with an easier schedule, no? Choosing Landers is choosing a hard schedule. There's no two ways about it, right? That is what it is. It is a wild schedule. So you're putting in the work. Now you're going to get married, you're going to settle down, you're going to be in a shul somewhere, and the guy next to you is going to be a guy who doesn't learn, doesn't daven, he shows up for Kiddush. And the Mesilas Yesharim is saying, are you davening for that person? Are you worrying about that person? One second, why don't you feel like, I did the work? Why do I have to care about you? You could have done the work also. The answer is, as we'll see very clearly, the answer is because Hashem loves that guy. That's the answer. Again, let's remember what the chassid is. The chassid is the person who's so in love with Hashem that he doesn't just want to follow the letter of the law, he wants to give Hashem nachas. Now imagine you have two kids. It's hard to imagine if you don't have kids, but try to imagine that you have two kids and one is super successful and the other one struggles and is not so successful. Would you want the super successful one to push away the one that's not successful, or would you want him to give to him? Of course, we want our children to be there for each other. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Avinu Avarachamon. He's our father. The guy sitting next to me in shul, he's also a son of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem loves him also. Besides for the fact that we can't judge other people. But Hashem loves him. So the Mesilas Yesharim tells us, get rid of that feeling of, I did the work. It's not the point. The point is you were Zeicha to get where you are, but what about Hashem's other son? Are you worrying about Hashem's other son? She'ein HaKadosh Baruch Hu chafetz ba'ovdan ha'rishoim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that Rishoim should be lost. Ela mitzvah mutelas ala chasidim. There's a mitzvah on Hasidim lehishtadel, to attempt, to try, lezakaisam, to give to them, ulechaper aleim, and to atone for them, to daven for them. You do this when you're doing your avodah. Have in mind, I'm making kiddush, I'm learning Torah, and I want it to be a schutz for the whole Klal Yisrael, not just for me. And v'gam b'tfilasei b'poil, when you're davening, I'm not just davening for myself, I'm not selfish. I care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's other children. I'm davening for even the guys that aren't davening. I'm davening for them. It's not fair. I'm not worried about fear. I'm worried that Hashem should have nachas from all of His children. The hainu sheyispalel al doirei, daven for your generation, lechaper al mishet tzarich kapara, to ask for kapara for those who need it, ulahashiv b'tshuva, to ask Hashem to bring back b'tshuva mishet tzarich la, someone who needs it, ulelamed sanegoria al ador kula, and to look at the generation with a positive outlook. To look optimistically, to see the good in people, even when sometimes we naturally don't see the good in people. And I want to tell you that there's someone very, 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 very close to me that went off the derech. And it's a very, very big tragedy in my life. And I'm a mela naturally daven to Hashem that he should do tshuva, because I'm heartbroken. And when I read this parak, I'm thinking to myself, why am I just davening for him? Because he happens to be the guy who I love. But Hashem loves all Jews. Hashem even loves the ones that I don't know, or that I don't have such a relationship with. So our job is to daven that Yidden should do tshuva. When we say Hashivenu Avinu L'Seirasecha, we're thinking like, okay, Hashem, I want to stay out of Gehenim. Please accept my tshuva. But we should think, Hashem, bring everyone back with tshuva. Bring Klal Yisrael back to you. Okay? Now, by the way, there's a little bit of a question. How are you davening that other people should do tshuva? Don't people have bechira? Tali, what do you think? People have bechira. The Mefarshim discussed this. I'm davening that you should do, not you, I'm sure you never did an Aveira, but if I would daven that someone should do tshuva, well, tshuva is up to the person. Hashem runs the whole world, but Kol Bidei Shemayim, but there's a chutz. Chutz mi Yiras Shemayim. Yiras Shemayim is up to the person. So how could it be that we daven that other people should do tshuva? But so that's the point. We daven to Hashem. I think it's a partial answer, Tali. I don't think it's a full answer. We daven to Hashem to please give this person opportunities for tshuva. Of course, whether or not he takes the opportunity is up to him. But be in the right place at the right time. I'll tell you one Maisa. I have other Maisas for the next time. I don't want to say everything now because it's late. But I tell you a Maisa that there's a woman that I know who's from, and she Baruch Hashem, she raised a beautiful from family. Her sons and sons-in-law are Talmidei Chachamim. She has grandchildren that are from. It's a beautiful, beautiful from family. Okay? But she became from when she was in her 20s. And I was once talking to her on the phone, and I said to her, if you don't mind my asking, what makes a college student decide to suddenly become from? How did that happen? So she said there were things that happened when I was in college that made me look into Yiddishkeit, but it didn't start when I was in college. She told me it started when I was about 7 years old. A little surprising, right? She told me that her mother was in the choir in her conservative temple. And every Shabbos, her mother would drive to temple to sing with the choir, the Shabbos tea, whatever they say. And she used to go along with her mother, and the drive from their house to the temple was through a frum neighborhood. And her family life was very compromised. There wasn't shalom bayis in her house. It was very difficult. And she used to drive through the frum neighborhood just around the time that families were walking home from shul. And she used to sit with her nose pressed against the window, watching these families looking happy and schmoozing with each other and having a good time, like we do when we come out of shul. It's like a little bit of a geschmack time when we come out of shul. And she noticed it as a little girl. And it was on her mind her whole life. Like, what do these people have that they look so good? They look so connected. They look so happy. Not to say that everyone's happy, but overall as a community, it was like looked so functional to her. She told me those were the first seeds to her becoming from. Amazing, right? But imagine that Hashem had not given her that. Imagine she had been nowadays she'd be on her iPad, instead of looking out the window. There were no iPads then, So then the seed wouldn't have been planted. Do you know how many thousands of hours of mitzvahs, ma'asim tovim, tefillos, and Torah have been said or done in this family because this little girl was looking out the window when she drove to shul on Shabbos? That's an opportunity that Hashem gave her. And maybe, perhaps, Sally, I think that's a little bit of a teretz, that we daven to Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give opportunities, help us have opportunities, things to inspire us, that even the people that are rachik from Hashem should come across things that make them think twice. And there are many, many stories where that happened, and that's what we beg Hashem for. Okay, we'll stop here for today. We'll continue Be'ez Hashem this topic